Hello. For my final project, I've decided to create a professional learning opportunity investigating childhood poverty in our local community here in Rochester, New York. The professional development session that I would provide for educators would allow participants to develop knowledge around current statistics existing in our community regarding child poverty, as well as potential reasons as to why this problem exists and has been for quite some time. What will also be a part of the professional learning development will be me sharing resources with teachers who might be interested to navigate this topic with students in their learning environments. In addition to resources that are shared that can be a part of the learning process, I will share some practical ideas of how students alongside the teacher can be active in the fight against child poverty in our local community. Including a topic such as this into curriculum and instruction is relevant to critical pedagogy in that it helps students build knowledge, awareness, and agency towards social justice, advocacy regarding social class and economic inequalities. So I will share my screen now so I can bring up the presentation. So let me just see here. Okay, so let me just make this bigger for myself. This. Okay, so I will get started. So I titled the professional learning development opportunity for educators to attend as positively impacting poverty in the local Rochester community. Oops, let me just get into view here, actually. View. Aha, there we go. Positively impacting poverty in the local Rochester community. I thought it was wise to kick off the learning experience with the teachers that would attend as really a reflection for all of us to start on the same page as far as thinking, what does it mean to truly analyze, examine, and consider our beliefs, attitudes, and practices, possibly some implicit biases that we hold and transmit. I think it's advantageous to take a microscopic lens to the language that we as educators use and the language that we allow to be used in our instructional spaces. I want to highlight the research conducted in social class and the hidden curriculum of work, in which 5 sample schools were a part of this research study. And it was concluded that students in affluent and elite schools were able to develop skills and knowledge such as creative expression and peer collaboration, analytical thinking, opportunities to have authentic discourse, practice in positions of power, and agency in their own learning. These knowledges and skills developed were vastly different from the expectations and skill development for students from low-income or working-class backgrounds. In a sense, teachers had predetermined which skills a particular cohort of children would be performing in their future place in society, therefore concentrated on those skills while they had the students in front of them. Bell Hooks articulates how class privilege empowers some students more than others, granting authority to some voices more than others. According to Aronowitz, it's the latest means of exclusion, placing the burden of failure in academic achievement on the individual rather than the system. As critical educators, it is imperative that we dissect our curriculum and our pedagogical practices to invigorate progress for individuals and society as a whole. We should also encourage our students to reflect similarly. If not, we are helping to reproduce a system of unequal social, political, economic, and cultural relations. Critical literacy is another domain to reflect on. Critical literacy is not a lesson plan or instructional strategy. Rather, it's the application of our literate lives. Literacy achievement can set students on a different trajectory. It's also important to highlight Lee's article in which she informs the multiple literacies one can possess, including language, reading and writing, and new literacies such as digital media, visual text literacy, music, movement, art. These new literacies can help create the change makers our world needs when we take a lens of critical literacy. One way we can do that is by bringing the world and its oppression into our classrooms. Our local news media shared a story in March 2022 regarding the continued poverty crisis existing in Rochester, New York. A child is defined as living in poverty if they are in a household with earnings below the federal poverty threshold. The 2022 U.S. Census Bureau poverty threshold for a family of three, that being 2 adults and 1 child, was $23,556. I'm going to play this news clip here, which is actually the inspiration for why I decided to go in this direction for this final project.
Nearly half of all children in Rochester live in poverty, as detailed by the U.S. Census Bureau. That ranks the city second highest in the nation out of all places with a population of 100,000 or more. Alex Love reports on how local nonprofits are calling to change this for the better.
Only Syracuse has a higher childhood poverty rate than Rochester among mid to large-sized cities. Local nonprofits are disappointed but say this is nothing new after decades of political and economic systems working against average families. Those with the children's agenda in Rochester, like Pete Nabosny, found poverty worsened for families after the housing market crashed in 2008. It's been difficult to recover with housing still unaffordable to many and crime plaguing families.
It's been a persistent problem this team that really limits a lot of positive outcomes for young people, because childhood poverty is unfortunately associated with all sorts of lifelong problems, whether it's worse health outcomes, worse educational outcomes, involvement in the criminal justice system.
A popular idea to give families in need more support is starting up the federal tax credit again. But recently, nonprofits are also partnering with the city and school district to guide children to better opportunities through jobs and internships.
That's a great way for particularly teenagers to get their feet wet in the job market, see what they enjoy doing, earn some money, and hopefully start building towards a lifetime of good earnings.
We need to change the environment for their parents, and we need to make things equitably accessible for everyone.
The U.S. Census Bureau calculates 48.2% of all children in Rochester live in poverty. But Jerome Underwood with Action for a Better Community argues political and economic systems need to change for parents to get the rate down.
Just about every economic category you look at has these same disparities in terms of the levels of employment for people of color. They also need to change their practices to make sure that employment is fair and equitable.
Within that 48.2% of all children in Rochester living in poverty, a majority come from Black and Latino families, according to the Children's Agenda, highlighting racial disparities among economic hardships. Reporting in Rochester, Alex Love, News 8.
Since 2015, when this data was last collected on a widespread scale, the childhood poverty rate in Rochester did drop overall by a little more than 3%.
Hello, I'm Patrick Stewart.
Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing there. Hold on. Let me get back to my presentation. View. Sorry about that. Slideshow from beginning. No, current. Okay. So it's going to play again. Let me just stop it. There we go. Okay. So as I had mentioned at the beginning of this, one of the objectives of providing this learning experience for teachers was to also make sure that they had built some sound knowledge around the statistics regarding current child poverty in our local community. So I have a few visuals to share here that would provide participants with some of the most recent data that we have available across our 8-county region. This data was pulled from ACT Rochester, which is an initiative of the Rochester Area Community Foundation. So counties outside of Monroe tend to have lower numbers reflected in census data, which increases the margin of error that you will see highlighted here. So it's important to be cautious of the dramatic values. For example, if we look at Monroe County here, we can see that as of 2022, 19.11% is the percentage, of children in poverty. If we come down here to Yates County, it would appear as though it's higher at 23.4 percentage of children in poverty. But when you actually break down the numbers, the total number that Monroe County has of children living in poverty is just over 29,000. And Yates County total number is just over 1,200. So a pretty significant difference if you just glimpse and look at these percentages without taking the numbers into account. In 2022, Monroe County here accounted for over 71% of all children living in poverty across this 8-county region. 66% of that total are children that reside in the city of Rochester, which you can kind of see here where it says Rochester here. These are all the suburbs of Rochester, but in the actual city of Rochester, that of course accounts for the largest number in our Monroe County. This graph gives us information regarding the race and ethnicity of the children who are living in poverty. And as was highlighted in that news clip, a majority come from Black and Latino families. So as we can see here, if we look just at Monroe County, of the 6,551 Black African American children living in poverty, more than 81% of that total are residents in the city of Rochester. It's also important to note that the number of Asian children experiencing poverty has increased by 30% from 2021 to 2022. That's across the whole 8-county region. And in addition to seeing this race and ethnicity breakdown across the 8 counties, we can also view data at a state level and a national level. The final chart that shows this crisis is particularly impacting Black and African American and Hispanic Latino families is these 2022 totals really allows us to consider the crisis at a local, state, and national level. These visuals will be powerful for the participants that would attend this learning session. However, it's important to note that these graphs and data points would be a powerful instructional tool as well that educators could use with their students if they decided to explore this topic of child poverty in their classrooms. A powerful pedagogical tool is simply allowing the opportunity for our students to talk, which I think that we as educators do not allow enough of in our learning environments. Making it common culture that our students are talking to one another and asking questions and voicing their opinions and sharing their ideas is really important, especially so when navigating a sensitive topic such as poverty or homelessness. As highlighted in the news clip, there have been decades of economic and political systems working against average families. There's racism, classism, economic disparities, social disparities, inequitable employment opportunities, housing inequality, and so on. Effective teachers create a culture in which asking questions is an expectation. Questioning, examining, and reflecting are valued as powerful moves that optimize the learning environment and learning experience. Students, especially young children, are naturally curious and will likely have wonders. As educators, it's important to honor student voice, to genuinely listen, and to be responsive in honest but developmentally appropriate ways. Another powerful pedagogical tool that educators can utilize is literature. Storytelling gives students the ability to develop skills such as perspective taking, empathy, compassion, and problem solving. Books are an effective instructional tool when learning about difficult themes. Here is a sample of 3 books that would be appropriate to utilize while navigating this topic. This first one here, Saturday at the Food Pantry. This character here is Molly, and her mom don't have enough food, so they go to their local food bank. When Molly is at the food bank, she enjoys generously coloring pictures for all the people that she meets and sees, and actually runs into a classmate who feels quite embarrassed to be there. But Molly reminds her new friend that everyone needs help sometimes. In lunch every day, one boy is constantly stealing another boy's lunch. Surprisingly, he gets invited to that boy's birthday party, in which his mom does a little bit of digging and eventually figures out why the boy is stealing food. This wonderful mom ensures that this little boy never has to take anyone's lunch again because she provides it for him. And I know how to draw an owl. All the school kids are impressed with Belle here, who makes a lifelike owl drawing. They can't believe how wonderful this drawing of an owl is, how realistic it is. But Belle doesn't tell them why she knows how to draw owls so well. We learn that Belle and her mom live in their car in the woods where an owl lives too. Belle learns that a new classmate is in a similar circumstance to her and welcomes him, just like the owl welcomed her. These books are developmentally appropriate for children ages 4 and up. So early elementary teachers could find these titles beneficial. These titles would be more appropriate for students ages 9 to 12, 9 to 14. They would be appropriate. And this first one, No Fixed Address. This book portrays a character, Felix, who doesn't want to tell anyone that he's been living in a van for months. His mom is worried about social services taking him, so he keeps quiet even though he really wants a bathroom. His hope is that he can win his favorite TV game show, so they'll finally have enough money to get an apartment. This story depicts homelessness as circumstances beyond a child's control. In Isaiah Dunn is My Hero. This story integrates themes of grief, family, and poverty. The main character, Isaiah, is struggling after his dad dies. His mom, too, finds it difficult to cope and ends up quitting her job and drinking. The family of 3 live in a motel where Isaiah watches his 4-year-old sister. He finds strength and inspiration in his father's journaled stories about a superhero. Isaiah begins to write his own poems and eventually sells them as a means of making money for his family. In Carry Me Home, the main character, Lulu, needs to take care of her little sister after their dad abandons them at the RV park where they've been living. She makes paper cranes and wishes that her dad would come back, as he has in the past. They go undiscovered by adults for several weeks, but one day she misses her sister's pickup time, and social services is called. Lulu learns what community means and that adults aren't the enemy. The link down below here contains even more powerful titles that can be used to support teaching and learning about the topic of child poverty. Similar to storytelling, writing is another powerful vehicle in which students can develop essential skills while discussing societal issues such as voice, analytical thinking, and agency. Young students can use a combination of drawing and writing to express themselves. The writing topics that are listed here become more advanced as you move down the list. So older elementary students would have opportunities to, for example, write to their local, state, federal legislator advocating for those living in poverty. Or another example is that would be more of an advanced writing prompt, is discussing America's justice system and its criminalization of poverty and those in homelessness. Those experiencing homelessness, excuse me. Down below here is also an additional link, which provides even more writing prompts, not necessarily specific to the topic of poverty, but social issues in general. Paulo Freire is considered by many to be the most influential educational philosopher in the development of critical pedagogical thought and practice. He illustrated that it's not just a cognitive process. It too is implied in action. Developing a critical consciousness as educators and empowering our students to develop this way of thinking about their world is pivotal. But what will we do when we have an enhanced awareness? Here are some ideas of how educators and students can be active in the local Rochester community as they are investigating the topic of poverty. Action for a Better Community and the Children's Agenda are 2 local organizations working in the fight against children and families existing in poverty. Possible interviews could include Mr. Jerome Underwood, who is the president of Action for a Better Community. Mr. Underwood has had a whole life's mission his whole life mission has been about the eradication of poverty, with the ultimate goal of societal self-sufficiency. So that would be a powerful interview that students could experience, as well as the Children's Agenda has individuals that our students could reach out to and connect with if they were interested in learning more about legislation and policy and community partnerships in regard to our local poverty issues. FoodLink has transformed from a traditional food bank to a public health organization. Their vision is that the fight against hunger and the fight against poverty are one and the same. I included here the 2024 report, which highlights the tremendous impact FoodLink has on our local community, ensuring families and children get access to healthy nutrition. FoodLink has a community kitchen and cafe, curbside market, food distribution center, and a 1.6 acre urban garden, offering a variety of options for students and teachers to be active in the fight together against poverty. I'm going to play this little clip here that tells us a little bit more about volunteers and how they are tremendously impactful in FoodLink's mission.
The volunteer program directly impacts FoodLink in our day-to-day process. Without our volunteers, we wouldn't be able to get half the amount of work done that we do. This year in 2023, we have had just under 2,500 volunteers total, which equated to roughly about 17,000 hours served from our volunteers, which also equals to 8 full-time employees throughout the year. We have multiple volunteer opportunities here at FoodLink. All opportunities range from Monday to Saturday. Typical day for me is setting up volunteers as they come in the morning to start their morning shift. I conversate with our core volunteers, who are volunteers who set up their own schedule. They come in multiple times a week. We get to know each other and things like that, and they also become a part of the FoodLink family.
So I volunteer here on the curbside market truck, typically once a week. I'm here all day. We visit 4 different sites to take fruits and vegetables and food to places that don't have easy access to a grocery store. I started at FoodLink in July of 2020. So we were doing, during the lockdowns, we were doing emergency food packing in Henrietta. And then once that ended, I moved over to the Mount Reed location where we were doing donation sorting of food. And then I transitioned to the market truck. We volunteered to come to FoodLink for a day to work. And so that got me connected with them, and I saw what a good organization it was. And so I wanted to continue.
At FoodLink, our groups sort through boxes that are donated to them that get distributed to other communities within Rochester. We choose to volunteer at FoodLink because the process is well managed. We're able to sign up online, everyone registers and shows up at a convenient time. There are plenty of different time slots available for the entire company to pick and choose when they can volunteer for them. Our group feels really good when we volunteer at FoodLink, just knowing we make the difference in supporting FoodLink and the number of volunteers that they need to operate successfully in the Rochester area.
When I became a core volunteer, one of the advantages was working with the same people every week. Though I have done a lot of things at FoodLink, I've worked in the kitchen, I've done food distributions outside. One of the things that I really like best is first sort. First team. It's just a group of people who come and we just unload banana box after banana box. We sort it into large categories. It then comes to second sort where people do more more of a quality review of those products to make sure that everything is the kind of product that you would purchase at a supermarket if you went. The feeling is pretty much that what we're here to do, certainly with our lives, is to make the world a better place. And every Wednesday, there's a group of people that I know who are my friends who come and make the world a better place.
Okay. Additionally, Rochester is receiving 25 million out of a 50 million anti-poverty pilot program from the New York State budget for state fiscal year 2024-2025. Maintaining careful attention with current events is another way to encourage students to be active, especially once this poverty curricular unit has completed. Of course, it's important to be responsive to different ideas that students might offer when they are problem solving around this issue of what they would like to do. Oops, next one. Okay, I'd like to close this presentation with a message of hope. I was recently listening to the internationally known meditation teacher, Tara Brach, discuss Bodhisattva teachings in Buddhism, which puts individuals on a pathway to awakened hearts and minds. She states, for the crises of these times, whether talking about the catastrophes happening to our planet, authoritarianism, inequities, they all have their roots in the human psyche. Man is not the enemy. It's the conditioning in our minds of greed, hatred, and at the core, this delusion that we're separate. As critical educators, it's vital to adopt a pedagogy of hope, dedicating ourselves to a culture of compassion and empathy directly impacts the students in front of us, but also can produce ripple effects in communities, the larger society, and our world. The following 2 slides contain all the references used for this presentation. Thank you for viewing.